Okay, welcome back. Now we are on our MongoDB one-to-many relationship tutorial with Mongo's examples. I'm going to be the driver and Bhabha is going to be my navigator. So in this tutorial, I will be showing one of the most important relationships in MongoDB, which is a one-to-many relationships, and we'll also review the three criteria that we'll be using to choose referencing or embedding for improving our application performance. Then we're going to make some MongoDB one-to-many relationship examples using our Mongo's library. So firstly, we're going to assume that we want to design a tutorial blog data model, and we want to have images, comments, and tutorials. As you can see, our models here on our VS Code, and we call them one-to-many relationships, right? With the difference based on the quantity, we can distinguish between three types, which is one to few, one to many, and one to a lot, right? So depending on the types of relationships, on data access patterns or data cohesion, will decide how to implement this data model, right? And there are three ways we can. The first one is to normalization, which is also referred to as reference data models. In this in our MongoDB reference form, we keep all the documents separated, which is exactly what normalized means. As you can see here, this is an example. We have our tutorial here. There's ID, title, author, comments. We have comments, ID, username, text, created ad, right? So we can see that in this tutorial document, we have an array where we store our IDs, where we store the IDs of all the comments, so that when we request tutorial data, we can easily identify the comments, right? So there's a different way of doing this, right, which is to separate that, right, which is normalization. The other way of doing this is denormalization, which is embedded data models. So when we normalize data, we are simply embedding the related documents right into the main document, right? So we're just nesting things inside of other things. As you can see, this is the same as the previous one, except it's embedded now, right? The comments, rather than it being its own document, it's an array that has an object, and it's embedded into the existing tutorial document, right? So now we want to know, when do we use references or embedding for MongoDB one-to-many relationships? So for that, we have to consider the types of relationships, right? So when we have one-to-few relationship, we embed the related data documents into the parent documents, just like you see here, right? And then for one-to-many relationships, we can either embed or reference according to the other two criteria. And then with one-to-a-lot relationship, we want to use data referencing or normalizing, separating that data, because if we embedded a lot of documents out of one document, we could quickly make that document too large, right? So now we're going to move on to our data access patterns, right? So with one-to-many relationships, we are going to embed the documents. We want to know whether we should embed the documents or use data references. So we'll consider how often data is read along with the read-write ratio, right? So if the collection is read a lot, right, it's mostly read, meaning that we query to that database to retrieve that data, we should probably embed the data. However, if on the other hand our data is updated a lot, then we should consider referencing, normalizing the data, separating it, right? Because the database engine does not, it won't have to do more work to update and embed a document than a standalone document, right? So now we're going to move on to data cohesion, which is the last criteria, which is just a measure of how much the data is related, right? So if two collections belong together, then they should be embedded. However, if they're not, we should separate them and normalize them, right? So in our tutorial blog, as an example, we have a widget called recent images, right? And our images could belong to separate tutorials. This means that we are going to query images on their own collections without necessarily querying the tutorials themselves. So those are not they are not related, so there's a very little data cohesion, right? So now moving to what we have right here, the Node.js is already set up. Our Node.js app is already set up. We've already installed Mongoose, right? You can see in our package.json, we've already installed Mongoose as a dependency, and this is going to be our server.js. I'm just going to go there now. As you can see, this is our server.js. We export Mongoose, right? we import mongoose, right? And then we go to index.js, and in index.js, as you can see, we're exporting this model right here, which is tutorials, which is importing the tutorial image, importing image, and so on and so on, right? So now we want to go into the first step where we're going to create appropriate models, right? So there are three cases. It's for tutorial and images, that's a one-to-few relationship. Tutorial to comments, that's a one-to-many relationship. And then category to tutorials, that's a one-to-a-lot relationship. So in case one, we want to represent the relationship between the tutorial and its images. So we create a tutorial model with mongoose.schema, right, in our tutorial.js file. You can see that's what we have here. And then in server.js, we have to add the following code here, right, to create the image. And then, yeah, so we're able to query it and save it to our database, right? So now after this, I'm going to go to my terminal. Where's my terminal? I'm going to open my terminal, and I'm going to run this command here. Okay, so yeah, this thing is working now. So let's say node source /server.js, and in our console, let's just wait to see. Cannot find module mongoose. Oh, sorry, I didn't npm install. Okay, now we've installed our dependencies. We've installed our dependencies. I'm just gonna run this command again. And as you can see, we've connected to MongoDB, and we've created tutorials. You can see in our terminal, this is what we see here, right? So the whole point of this was to display the one-to-few relationship, right, representing the relationship between the tutorial and its images, right? So now we are going to embed our images, right, with appropriate fields in the tutorial document, but we also want to query images on their own collections without necessarily querying for the tutorials themselves. And to do that, right, in our image.js, we're going to have this, right, as our image model, right? And then we're going to export it, right? And then after exporting it, we want to change the create image function in our server.js, right? So our image function now, as you can see, it looks a bit different. Yeah, it looks a bit different, right? And with this, when we run the app, the results should look like this. And I'm just gonna kill this connection here, and then I'm just gonna run the app once again, and you'll see. Let me just scroll to the first thing. You can see it's a bit different now, as you can see, right? That's the results we get now. And if we go to our database, we can see the images collection with 2 documents. So let me just go to our MongoDB camp. So yeah, in our campus, that's what we're gonna see, 2 images there. So now we're moving on to our second case, which is our one-to-many relationships, right? So now one-to-many relationships, that's basically our relationship with our comments, right? And with our comments, we have this comment.js file here where we create this model for our comments. As you can see here, that's the schema. And then after that, because it's relating to our tutorials, in our tutorials we add a comments array, right? And our comments array is going to look something like this, as you can see, right? And then we can see that we have all of this. So in our server.js, we're going to have a new function here which is called create comment, and our create comment, we are going to modify the run function, right? And this is what it's supposed to look like. So let's go, let me just uncomment the run function here, and this is what it looks like, right? Yeah. And yeah, so this is our run function, and when we run the app, we look at the results in our console, it should look something like this. So let's just double check. Just gonna run this command again. Identifier run has been declared. Oh, sorry, I have two run functions by mistake. Let me just comment the first one out. I didn't realize I have two of them by mistake. Yeah, so we're just gonna use the second run function. So I'm just gonna call this command once more. And as you can see here, so let's just what's the result? You see we have the comment as an array, as you can see here. So the array field contains our reference IDs to the comments, right? And now we're going to use the populate function to get the full tutorial data, and we're going to do that with the get tutorial with populate function, right? So get tutorial with populate, it's this one here. So you can see, let me just uncomment this, and when we run it, we're supposed to get this populated tutorial. And let me see if it doesn't have any duplicates. Yeah, it doesn't have duplicates, so I'm just gonna uncomment it. And so I'm gonna run it again, and we're supposed to see these populated tutorials, right? As you can see here, we just scroll to the top. Where is it? Yeah, we see it doesn't say populated tutorial, but as you can see, it looks similar to what we have here, right? The what's this? The comments array is populated, right, with stuff inside. And then after, now we're gonna focus on the third case, which is 1 to a lot, right? And in this case, we are going to define the category model with two fields, name and description. So we're going back to category now, and as you can see, we have name and description. And after that, we're exporting our category model. And in tutorial.js, right, what we are going to do is what we have done basically is just incorporate that category model that we have here, and we give it a type and a reference, right? Then after that, we're going to define functions for creating category and adding tutorial to category, and those two functions are found in server.js. So there's create category here, and then we also have add tutorial to category here, right? So we can change our run function to look something like this to test this out, right? So if I go to our run function, what is it? There it is here. It's basically what we have here, right? Let me just comment this one out and use the other one. Yeah, let's comment this one out, and then we're gonna uncomment this. So this is the function, the run function updated now, right, to test the implementation of the category model, right? And so when we do this and we run this command again, this is what we should see, right? You see we have this populated tutorial here, and you can see our create function retrieved all tutorials in the category, and it's showing the category's name, right? So it's referencing it by ID, right? So now we want to get the tutorials in the category and reference them by name. To do that, we have to change so the changes are already made, right? And then we're gonna run the app again. Okay, yeah, so to reference it by name, we have to change these functions here, and I'm just going to comment this out, and I'm going to uncomment this here, which are the changes that we've made, and it's this function here. I'm just gonna uncomment it, and then we're gonna run the command again to see the changes. think I didn't comment out properly. Yeah, so let's run the command again. So you can see now it's referencing the category by its name, and it's no longer referencing it by its ID now. So in summary, we learned many things about one-to-many relationships, and we've implemented this in a Node.js app using Mongoose. And just before I summarize, I just want to show you on the campus what we have, the changes that we've made, right? Let me just move this here, and we have our database here. And in our database we have, why isn't it open? Right, we have images, as you can see. We have the image document here, comments, we have the tutorials, as you can see. We have all of these are empty, right, because we reference them from the other documents, right? So we summarize the tutorial in several lines, right? So just to summarize it, we don't have any standard or specific rule. For all cases, it depends on what our application queries demand and whether we are querying data or updating data, and we should identify the problems in our applications use cases first, right? And then we're going to model our data to answer those questions and work in the most efficient way. So with one-to-few and one-to-many relationships in general, we want to think about embedding first, and then with one-to-a-lot relationships, we want to reference instead of embedding. So when we use embedding with data, it's when we are mostly reading the data and rarely updating that data, and when two models belong intrinsically together. So when we think about referencing data, is when we are updating the data a lot and we are not querying that data frequently as a collection on its own. And we never allow arrays to grow indefinitely. So we use child referencing for one-to-many relationships and parent referencing for one-to-a-lot relationships, right? So that was all for the tutorial. I was the navigator, I was the driver, and Bhabha was my navigator. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.